up, guys? We got the 94 GMC back in the shop, OBS, and if yours is anything like mine, it's got 200,000 miles and you're fighting the steering. So today we're going to address that. Got a new steering gearbox and Cunningham Machine Steering Shaft. So I'm looking forward to this. All the reviews on these things look awesome, and it's like the one thing keeping me from driving this right now is that it takes two hands and it's still kind of scary to drive. We've replaced a lot of stuff up until now. I've got all new steering as far as tie rods and Pitman arm and bushings, ball joints, all that's new. Only thing left is the steering gearbox. I even have a new rag joint on the steering shaft, but I don't know. We're gonna get rid of the rag joint all completely and do a Cunningham Machine steering shaft with U-joints. I'll show you that in just a second, but yeah, I'm looking forward to driving this some more, so let's fix it. All right, guys, this is what came in the mail today. This is the Redhead steering gearbox, and got this a couple days ago. This is the Cunningham Machine steering shaft, and this eliminates the rag joint that comes in these old trucks and you get U-joints, which is metal, like on metal. This eliminates all that play that can happen in the old style steering shaft, and it's a well-built American-made piece. So looking forward to putting this on. This is a bolt-in installation. This will go right in place of the other one. This is the Redhead steering gearbox. I went with the normal ratio, not the quick ratio. The quick ratio, I was on the fence about it. This is just a cruiser truck. It's $100 more for the quick ratio. I could have went either way, but we just got the normal 3-turn lock-to-lock gearbox, where I think the quick ratio is 2.5 turns. But in the forums, everything I've read about these was stellar. They're good. Sometimes if you go to the parts store, AutoZone, discount, you never know what you're going to get. And those are still run you a couple $100 at AutoZone, and they'll start leaking and won't deal with the play in there at all sometimes. So I thought it'd be better just to spend a little bit more, get something a little more quality, and I won't have to fool with it no more, hopefully for the life of the truck. Let's see what this is about. I haven't opened this one yet. Like I said, all the reviews have been good on it that I've read. Sealed up in there. Man, it's heavy. Alright, big yellow tag on here. Warning, any adjustment by anyone will void the warranty. This gear was bench tested and double checked for play, therefore is no play in this steering gear. Oh, don't mess with it, they say. Alright, first step, drain the old fluid out of here. And you can see in this OBS we got a LS motor. Very common these days. You see how this works. It's just one of these little hand cheap pumps. And ooh, I don't think this one's gonna be any good. Look at all that rust. It's been a while since I used it. There we go. Getting something anyways. And I guess you're supposed to change this fluid every once in a while. It keeps the wear down on the steering gearbox. I have never really done that before, but oh man, I'm getting dirty. I guess that's part of working on stuff. But yeah, I guess in the future I'm gonna try to keep this fluid as clean as possible, especially since we're invested in the the Redhead steering gearbox. That's most of it. That'll limit the mess that we make anyways. I guess a shop vac could have worked on this. Got the fluid pumped out best we can. No, if those little chunks were in the pump or in the reservoir, because that pump had been sitting for a while. I'm gonna hope in the pump and not the reservoir down there. Alright, here you can see the old gearbox leaking like crazy out that shaft out the bottom there. I mean, it is dirty under here. I think the truck's got over 200,000 now. I don't know, the odometer quit working at 196 a year ago or two when we did the LS swap. So it's definitely well over 200. You can see the new rag joint back there. I'm gonna completely eliminate that though. We've got new tie rod inner and outer, new control arms upper and lower. So you should have this thing driving really good after all these upgrades. Alright, we got both of these lines off. Make sure you got a pan down there because they're going to leak a little bit of fluid. 18 millimeter worked on both of those lines. Now we need to loosen this bolt to get the steering shaft off. So for the steering shaft, that bolt is a 13, and get that loosened up. Alright, with that steering shaft bolt loosened up, you want to get in here with a pry bar or something, and we're going to collapse this up. This shaft will collapse into itself there. It's almost off. We're going to shove it a little bit farther. I think they make them collapse like that as a safety feature. That way when you get in a collision, that this doesn't, you don't turn into a kebab with this going up through the cab. So we got those two separated. Since we're replacing the whole shaft, I'm going to have to do that again up here. Get that bolt loose and slide it off. But I've got the steering wheel leveled and the tires straight. But I guess it doesn't really matter because we're replacing all this. And I'm going to try to remember where that flat piece was on the spline and have the new one kind of the same. And definitely going to need an alignment anyways. Like, we've changed the whole front end of this truck and haven't got an alignment, so it's due for one. I was kind of waiting to get this done before I got one. And so we'll get it as close as we can and we'll get it aligned. So up here is a 15 millimeter on the steering shaft. We're going to get it loosened up. Looks like they might have used a little Loctite on this before, which I see some blue on the threads. Probably not a bad idea to do that again, especially on components like this where it's like a safety thing. There we go. Old technology right there. I mean, it did the job. But we'll fix it up with something better. Alright, the new versus the old. U-joints and rack joints. Just replace this thing, but they're cheap. On a lot of trucks, this right here will fix your loose steering. It's just old technology, and these trucks are from the 90s, and most of them need to be replaced. So there's some, if you look in the forums, there's some Jeep steering shafts that will work in the 88 through 98, some of the trucks. It was just easier for me to order this brand new Cunningham Machine one than scour around and trying to find a low mileage one out of a Jeep. But for a lot of trucks, this does the trick for the steering. Alright, we got the truck up in the air. The steering shaft is out. We're going to start working on the bolts on the gearbox itself and get the Pitman arm off. But you definitely don't have to have a lift to do this. It just makes it a little easier if you do got one, so might as well use it. So the next thing is to get the Pitman arm off of the gearbox, but you gotta loosen this bolt here and take it off the steering linkage, get that cotter pin out. We'll do that next, and then take off this big nut and use a little puller to get it off. We're keeping this Pitman arm. It's fairly new. It's probably a couple months old. It doesn't have a lot of miles on it, so we'll reuse that piece, but we need to get it off of there. Alright, so it's a 22mm bolt on this Pitman arm to center link right here, and I got that off in the cotter pin, and I used this air hammer with the pickle fork and just separated these two, which I've never used one of these, but holy cow, that was way easier. So I got those separated. Now I need to pop this bolt off and put the Pitman arm puller on to get that part. The normal size sockets wouldn't work. I had to come open the jumbo drawer and get out the 1 5/16". Don't have to reach in here much, but it's nice to have these ginormous ones when you need it. Alright, so I got the 1 5/16" on here. This is the Harbor Freight Earthquake. Let's see if it's got what it takes to pop this big nut off of here. Oh, safety first. Forgot the safety glasses. Oh man, super easy. The steering shaft isn't hooked up, so you went to push on it with a wrench if the wheels were moving, so it's nice to be able to just buzz it off with that. Earthquake for the win. I'll bring you in here. There's the puller on there. It just kind of grabs them on each side of the Pitman arm, and you drive this in, and it's going to pull it off of there. They're relatively inexpensive, so this is kind of one that you can afford to have in the shop for situations like this. It's cheap. You can rent them from AutoZone and O'Reilly's and those places too if you need be, and I've done that, but I think the last time I rented this one I just didn't take it back, which is okay. We'll get out the Earthquake again and give it a go. Go. Got a little warm on that one. Woo. Might have messed up the thread. It's going to be bound here and bound up here. You might want to go ahead and loosen this and work it off of there now. So, it looks like this is a 21 for these 3 bolts on to the gearbox. Pop that loose. It shouldn't really go anywhere, but we'll keep a hand on it just in case. Break out the old Earthquake again. Alright, we got the Extensiones Grande. Loose now, just sitting in there. Kind of fell down. But now we just gotta finagle it out of there. And this is a very dirty job, so if you got some gloves laying around, I recommend it. Here's a side-by-side, old one, leaking seal. I believe to be original to the truck, as far as I can tell, compared to the new Redhead. They put a little mark here so they can tell if you're trying to adjust on it. I mean, they look almost identical, but 0 miles and fresh seals, 200 plus K and blown seals, so this should revive the steering a lot, along with the new shaft, the U-joint. So we're getting there. I went ahead and hit it with some black spray paint. It's a satin. I think they shipped this one raw. It was uncoated or unpainted. It's like $25 cheaper, I think, to do that. And I had some black paint here, so we just hit it with that real quick. Alright, so it's the next day. I'm finding online, the torque spec for the Pitman arm to the center link is about 46. I saw 50, 46. The one even said 60. So there we go. Just got to make sure you can line up the cotter pin. And then this guy was 180 from Redhead's website, so we need to set the torque wrench to 180, and it's a big inch and 5/16 nut, so you need the jumbo size on that. And there we go, 180. Alright, got it bolted in, and this big nut torqued to 180, and they got that one torqued to 50. Don't forget your cotter pin, and we can start hooking the lines up. And alright, got the gearbox installed. Got to hook up the lines now, but the end of the line, there's a little O-ring you got to swap out, or if you're just missing, put it on there. And Redhead was nice enough to send you a little baggie. I know some of the years are different, but this truck looks like it came with O-rings on the end of the lines here, so I'm swapping those out. We'll get those installed, and we'll keep going. Just keep in mind, if yours uses O-rings, just watch out for that. We got the Cunningham steering shaft installed. It's a little snug up at the top, but it went on, which is kind of a good thing, I guess. Looks good. I'm going to top it off with fluid, and they test them with ATF. Redhead does test the gearbox with them. So that's what I'm using. They say as long as it's Dex 3 or higher. So I just picked up some Lucas stuff. It's pretty good for the price. So we'll go through the bleeding process, getting the air out of it. Alright, so I topped it off. I'm going to hop inside, turn the steering wheel lock to lock a few times, and then we got to work some of the air out of it. Alright, so we wrapped up the install on the steering gearbox and the steering shaft, and this thing, night and day difference. I should have done this a long time ago. Really makes these trucks easier to drive. It's kind of questioning it because it is kind of expensive for that gearbox, but man, it turned out pretty nice. Here you can see the steering shaft. That's the Cunningham Machine. There goes the gearbox down there. And I drove this thing to work last week in an hour. It's about an hour each way. Did awesome. It actually steers easier. It's like back to one finger steering this thing. It's real smooth. I don't know what caused that, but I did put ATF in the reservoir. That's what, you know, the gearbox people use when they test them. So that might have made it smoother with just all the new components. And no more darting around, and drive straight, about as straight as you can get these old trucks to go. And it's just a pleasure to drive now. This is one that you could do in an afternoon in the garage. It's 3 bolts to get that gearbox off. It's kind of a little bit pain to pull the Pitman arm, but that ain't even that bad. That wasn't even that hard for me. But I mean, one afternoon you could have your truck steering really nice. Highly recommend it.